Tēnā koutou e te whanau. E whanau mai a hau I te taha o te moana o te whanganui a Tara. I raro I te maunga o te ahu marangi. Hei uri o hau, no Airini, no Wera, no Aotearoa hoki. Ke te noho o hau I nai nei ki tāmaki makaurau. Hei kai hautu o hau mō arohaina te ao. Ko Libby Giles tōku ingoa, no reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. I was brought up, nurtured and surrounded by the hills, the waters and hills of Wellington. I'm a Kiwi of predominantly Irish ancestry and I live in Auckland. The leadership I step up to is grounded in the love of the world. My name is Libby Giles. I'm the Education Director for the Centres of Asia Pacific Excellence, or CAPES. Greetings to all of you, to all of us. My mihi goes to the tangata whenua of the land we stand on, to Te Herenga Waka, to the Latin America Cape, and to everyone else joining us. A special thanks to the universities of Argentina and Mexico, and to the New Zealand Association of Language Teachers. Most of all, thank you to all of you for joining us as we step up to the world and explore the vital place of learning languages in global citizenship. Step Up to the World is a call to change the way we think and learn. Global citizenship education provides us with the conceptual lens and roadmap. Global citizenship education is a key tool in the response to contemporary challenges. It is holistic and interdisciplinary. There isn't an area of learning or life that it doesn't touch. Global citizenship education engenders empathy, prioritises well-being, and provides the critical thinking skills required to thrive in a complex world. It's also quite a mouthful to say, so commonly known as GCED or even GCED. Nobody owns global citizenship education. It's about collaboration and partnerships, an aggregation of knowledge, wisdom, and action. GCED has deep roots dating back to the establishment of UNESCO in 1945 and is found in varying stages of development all over the world. It's not a fly-by-night fad or a nice-to-have, it's a requirement. It aligns with, supports and delivers on local and international obligations, including Te Tiriti o Waitangi, the New Zealand curriculum, Te Mātaiaho, New Zealand's international education strategy, the Sustainable Development Goals, as well as UNESCO and OECD recommendations. CAPES education has a framework for supporting GCED that is grounded in three big ideas: tuakiritanga, hononga, and kaitiakitanga, identity, connections, and responsibility. The concept of global citizenship is not new. Blueprints are found in the knowledge systems of Indigenous people and the foundations of Eastern and Western thought. I am a citizen of the world, said Socrates. Theresa May said citizens of the world, people who think they're citizens of the world are citizens of nowhere. He's right and she's right. In the absence of a meta-sovereign, legally none of us are global citizens. But central to the definition of global citizenship are behavioural characteristics. Socrates understood who he was, how he was connected to everyone in the living world, and what it meant to be a responsible citizen. Are global citizens all the same? No. We're talking about universality plus difference. I've referenced Kwame Anthony Appiah here in his Cosmopolitanism. While grounded in universal principles, global citizenship celebrates identity and diversity. It gives us ways to become global without becoming the same, the worry of many when it comes to globalisation. It focuses on humanity while celebrating what makes us different. Language is a treasure of what makes us different. Learning languages and global citizenship are inextricably linked, from the understanding of the concept itself to the methods of learning. If you talk to a man in a language that goes to his head. If you talk to him in his language, that goes to his heart. Nelson Mandela. Through language, we interpret and communicate ideas from texts. We make meaning from different cultural sources, empathise with and understand each other, explore the relationships between theories, concepts and texts in the world, preserve cultural heritage, explore what it means to be a New Zealander or a citizen of the world through literature, question what personal identity is and how it helps people to be fully human. A blackboard notice in the San Fernando market in Madrid gives us a nice little tip that fits with this kaupapa. No tengas miedo de tener tu mente abierta. Tu cerebro no va a salir volando. Don't be afraid to open your mind. Your brain won't fly away. Now, we invite you to translate the idea of stepping up to the world in your language, or a language that you know, that captures its wairua. That is, step up to everything in the world that the world has to offer, as well as our responsibilities to each other and the planet. So now we've got a word cloud activity that all you need to do now is scan this QR code.
You'll see all the people who are really kind of tech savvy and they're
ready to go already with their QR code.
You can Google Answer Garden and put in the code there.
Let me introduce Her Excellency Maria Belén Bogado, Ambassador of Argentina to Aotearoa, who's going to make some opening remarks. Ambassador Bogado is a career diplomat. She's been Ambassador of the Argentine Republic to New Zealand since February 2021. She has served as Director General of the International Cooperation at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Worship of the Argentine Republic from 2019 to 2020, in charge of technical cooperation in bilateral and multilateral fields. She has also served as Deputy Director of the National Directorate for Multilateral Economic Relations, and abroad has served as Deputy Head of Mission at the Argentine Embassy to the Kingdom of Spain. So please welcome Her Excellency now.
Ena mana, ena reo, ena iwi, tena koutou, tena katu katoa. Ko Maria Belén Bogado, toku inoa, ko Paraná, toku awe hoi, i te reo take o toku whenua, ko Guarani te inoa, a ko te titanga o te ingoa, e huanga o te moana. Ko Pampas toku whenua, ko Atatine toku iwi, kia ora, no reira, tena koutou, tena tatu katoa. Hola a todos, good evening. I would like to thank Latam Cape and the Capes, Matthew, Libby, Pip, Laureen, and Aaron for organizing this amazing panel on the importance of language learning, which I have the pleasure to take in part along with Victoria Hallum, responsible for multilateral legal, consular, and protocol affairs at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Clara Gomez Jimeno, my friend, National Spanish Advisor and Education at the Spanish Embassy, Professor Rawinya Higgins, currently Chair and Commissioner of the Te Taura Whiri Te Reo Maori, the Maori Language Commission, Tufaina Faraimo, Assistant Principal, Glenview School, and Tokelaun teacher, which is incredible, Oliver Ibbetson from Federated Farmers and Prime Minister Scholar for Asia, and Annabelle Sinclair, Head of Languages, Wellington Girls High School, and Vice President of the New Zealand Association of Language Teachers. How important is to learn languages today in the 21st century? Cervantes said that a person who reads a lot and walks a lot, sees a lot and knows a lot. Today, for example, our language is the second most spoken mother tongue on the planet. Third, if we count native speakers, with nearly 600 million Spanish speakers worldwide, as Matthew appointed yesterday. It's a language that is spoken across a continent in 21 countries as an official language and in other 14 countries as a second language. 1/3 of the of the population in the United States is now able to speak Spanish. and these numbers are growing. It's part of our identity, and we must work for its dissemination, defense, and enrichment. Today, I think more than ever, in an increasingly interconnected world, as we saw in the screen, teaching a foreign language is essential. As an Argentine ambassador and foreign service officer, I want to stress the importance of being able to understand how my counterparts think, reason, feel, and perceive the world. Learning the language is not only about the use of different words of grammatical structures, that's the boring part, but also it is the way of understanding and experiencing reality through other lenses. Jorge Luis Borges wisely said, "A language is a tradition, a way of feeling reality, not an arbitrary repertoire of symbols." I became a diplomat thanks to the study of foreign languages. I was in France in 1991 in a cultural exchange, attending a French public school, when they took us to a university fair, as we have sometimes here in Wellington, and it was there where I discovered my vocation. During my career as a diplomat, I had the opportunity to expand my horizons. Apart from French, I have studied English, Portuguese, Italian, some Hebrew, and now I'm really happy that I am exploring Te Reo Maori in this beautiful country, Aotearoa, New Zealand. My country, Argentina, where Spanish is the official language, promotes multilingualism and language parity. At the United Nations, we maintain, along with other important countries, present here, Mexico, Spain, the role of custodian of the Spanish language. Multilingualism is an expression of plurality and implies the right and duty to understand and to be understood by others. As the Secretary General Guterres stressed lately, multilingualism is an essential factor in harmonious communication, very needed today among peoples and an enabler of multilateral diplomacy. By promoting dialogue, tolerance, and understanding, multilingualism ensures effective participation of all. As some of you may know, Argentina and New Zealand, we promote our working holiday visa program with 1,000 available visas to visit, work, live, and get to know our countries in both ways. It is a great opportunity to learn the Spanish language, in addition to being able to know and enjoy the cultural and the natural resources we have in Argentina, from tango in Buenos Aires, the Iguazu Fall, the forests, the lakes, the glaciers of Patagonia, Argentina, and the rest of Latin America, and I think Spain. We are open to receive you, to help you learn Spanish. I also invite you to consider studying in our country. The educational offer is important and diverse. Argentina has long-standing universities. One of the oldest dates back to the colonial period, 1613, the National University of Córdoba, which offers the PECLA program that allows a total insertion into Argentine culture. We brought some flyers, so here the part of the advertising part, of some of our best universities in Argentina. We will have it when we will share the cocktail upstairs. I really look forward to listening to our incredible panelists and enriching ourselves with these exchanges. Happy Aotearoa Spanish Language Week for all. Gracias, thank you, Nan.
Kia ora koutou, ko Victoria Hallum toko ingoa. Bonsoir a tous y a toutes. Buenos días, buenas tardes. Me alegro mucho estar con ustedes. My name is Victoria. I work at New Zealand's Foreign Ministry, and I would describe myself as an amateur linguist, amateur in both meanings of the word. I don't claim any particular aptitude But I have a great love of languages. I love my own language. I enjoy Scrabble. I love understanding the origins of words. I love the way when you learn a new word, you then come across it 3 times in the next week. I have taken that love into other languages. I was very fortunate as a child to learn Spanish in a full immersion environment, living in Spain and attending school there. I then later studied French throughout my schooling and had the great privilege of being posted to Paris with the Foreign Ministry and having both the privilege but also the humiliation of using French professionally. And there's nothing like the French for being protective of their language and telling you when you get it wrong. But it was still a great experience. And then most recently, I have been trying to learn more about the language of Aotearoa New Zealand. And to understand te reo. It's the hardest step in my language journey, but has helped me feel more connected to this wonderful place and the tangata whenua of this place. So it has been a great awakening. So I thought I would end with the whakatauki, toku reo, toku oho oho. My language, my awakening. And for me, language is driven by 3 things. Curiosity, to understand more about people and what they value and how they think. Connection, driven by a desire to connect with people. And then context. AI is increasingly going to be able to convey meaning, but I don't think it'll get there for curiosity, connection at the human level and context. Kia ora koutou.
Tēnā koutou katoa, no te whāru o rātou ki ahau, ko tūhoi tōku iwi. Engari pakeke mai au ki konei ki te whanganui ātara. Ko Rawania Higgins tōku ingoa ko au te tumu ahurei, tumu rua whetū o Te Herenga Waka, ko au hoki te toihau o te taurewhiri te reo Māori. Kia ora, my name is Rawania. I am the Deputy Vice-Chancellor Māori and Engagement here at Te Herenga Waka, Victoria University of Wellington. The Capes actually live in my portfolio, so it's a real privilege to be here, and tautoko Matthew and our kaimahi from our Capes group. I work here at the university. I'm a deputy, as I said, I'm the Deputy Vice-Chancellor, but I have a couple of side hustles that I do, one of which is being the Māori Language Commissioner for this country, as well as being on the Waitangi Tribunal and on the Reserve Bank. And so part of that, I found a lot of the spaces that I enter into has been through te reo Māori and learning te reo as a child, as a second language learner of heritage language, and understanding some of the nuance of having to learn that, particularly as an Indigenous person in this country, and how the language is valued. And so growing up with very little value attributed to te reo Māori, to where we are today, where we have 8 in 10 New Zealanders who see the value of te reo Māori as part of their identity as a citizen of Aotearoa New Zealand. So we've been on a long journey over the last 54 years, which has gone from protestation to celebration. And so I really look forward to having a conversation this evening around the connections that language can make. Tēnā koutou.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Annabelle Sinclair. I'm bonjour à toutes et à tous, guten Abend, ni men hao, and good evening to everybody. So I'm Head of Languages at Wellington Girls College, and so have been there for a number of years, and so teaching principally secondary school students. I started out learning languages at school, so I learned French and German at school. I ended up learning Dutch living in the Netherlands, so had experience of learning in an immersion context, which was actually quite challenging because everybody tries to practice their English on you. So lots of bizarre conversations with me speaking bad Dutch to people in shops and them speaking in much better English back to me. And then now learning Te Reo Māori, as lots of us. So I suppose I'm principally going to be talking tonight about sort of from a secondary school teacher's perspective. We are seeing sort of the expansion, I suppose, of what teaching languages looks like. So at school this year, we're running for the first time a Heritage Languages and Cultures course, teaching or trying to teach a group of 16 students who speak 10 different languages among them, none of which we officially speak, to maintain the heritage languages and so on. So I see that as an exciting new direction, supporting heritage languages speakers. And I think, and my other hat is that I've also been involved for a number of years, for a very long time with the New Zealand Association of Language Teachers, and until last year was the president of that. So now stepped down into the vice president's role, but in that role we support language teachers throughout the country, and with the support of the ministry through the Networks of Expertise project, we've have funding to provide support, help with resources, run conferences and things like that. So that's me. Merci.
Oliver. Thank you, everybody, and it's wonderful to be here with such a credentialed panel here tonight. I feel very blessed to be here with you. I'm currently working at Federated Farmers in a government relations role, but that's not really the hat that I'm wearing tonight. I have an MBA from National Taiwan University and a Master in Strategic Studies from this university here. About too long ago, I did an accounting degree in this room, and it feels a little bit funny to be back here up on stage. Look, the hat that I'm wearing tonight is as someone that in 2014-15, I went off to Taiwan to learn Mandarin Chinese on a Prime Minister's Scholarship for Asia. Over there, I met a girl, and we subsequently came back to New Zealand and we got married. And then in December 2019, we headed back to Taiwan to have our first child. Those of you doing the math realise that December 2019 was a funky time to be going overseas. So we subsequently spent the last 4 years living in Taiwan. During that time, I was able to hone some of my Chinese language skills, but what it really meant to me was I was being connected with a whole new family, a whole new way of life, a whole new culture. So learning a second language to me was not just about simply communication. What learning language to me meant was learning about a whole new culture, a whole new family, a whole new life, and a whole new way of doing things. So language is an important element to everything we do, and it does make us more globally connected. And I think that's where I sit here tonight. So thank you very much for having me here.
Talohani tātou kāinga, ko toko ingo ko Tufaina Faraimo, ko mātua, ko tahi mahila, hako he tai ki te atua mo te awano tēnei, ko ki mai ke haiani talanoanga vēnei. Hi everybody, my name is Tufaina Faraimo. I am a primary school bilingual teacher for the Ngangana Tokelaun, and I think it's the only bilingual hub in Porirua, if you know the landscape, and I just found out there's Samoan language hub in Nainai, which is probably the only other language hub in Wellington. So somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. So I'm here in my capacity as a primary school teacher, teaching the Tokelaun language, and a little bit about myself. I think just listening to everybody else's journey through their language journey, I was, my first language till 5 was Tokelaun language. But of course, I went to school and that got taken out of me. And it wasn't until I went to college and I learned the Māori language that I had to think in Tokelaun to get to the English. then from English to Tokelaun to get to the Māori, and that helped to revive my Tokelaun language. So I'm not sure whether I'm still a first language speaker, because I think I suffered a huge language loss in those early years. But I'm really excited to be here tonight to see how I can contribute to this prestigious panel. Hakou tailahi lele.
Thank you so much, all of you. I'm sitting here feeling quite inspired, but also in awe, really, of the diversity and richness of experiences that you bring to this panel. And in a minute, I'm going to ask a very broad question, which hopefully will turn into more of a conversation, and you'll start riffing off each other. But also, if you have questions out there, please prepare them, think about what you'd like to ask. We will have time at the end. I think someone's meant to be there flashing times at me, but I don't know whether there are any. So I'll just have to keep an eye. I'll ask Libby to keep a bit of an eye on the time. I think listening to Her Excellency, listening to Libby, listening to all of you already, there have been so many different connections made to the overall sort of theme and kaupapa of our event, which has really celebrated the learning of languages and places it, as Libby has said, at the heart of language learning. So I'd like to invite each of you, and maybe we'll start, are you happy to start with you again? No? Yes, Clara. You sat there, see, you poor thing. You arrived first and I said, you can sit there, Clara. Just to ask you to sort of share what you see as the essential worth of language learning, and you have already made so many allusions to that. Clara, would you like to start?
That's a very good question. This is, can you hear me? It's a very interesting question because I guess depending where you're from, you might be more exposed or less to languages from the beginning. For example, in Europe, because we got the European Union, everybody in the schools, we take a language or even two languages. In Spain, the first language we take is English, and then the second is optional. But also, we got different languages in our country, the oral official languages, and I think that a language helps you or assists you or is part of, becomes part of your personality, the way you behave without realizing it, because speaking one language and then the other, you completely turn into another person, and if you speak many different languages, you got many different ways of expressing things, and it's also good for meeting people.
Thanks. Well, I think, as I said in my introduction, what really drives me in my interest of language is curiosity. And I have really been enjoying applying that to te reo. I thought I would read a sentence from this wonderful little book that I found, written quite a long time ago now by Cleve Barlow, called Tikanga Whakaaro, because it's an amazing book because it's fully bilingual. So it has te reo at the front and then English at the back. And it's a number of little short thought pieces on different topics. And the topic I was going to turn to is Māori language, reo Māori. And it's great for someone who's at a very early stage to be able to flip back and forth and, see the whole sentence. But there's this wonderful sentence in there which I think sums up what we are talking about today. And language is the vehicle by which thoughts, customs, desires, hopes, frustrations, history, mythology, prayers, dreams, and knowledge are communicated from one person to another. And I just thought that was beautiful, but also so exciting for me because I won't try with such great native speakers to read the same sentence out in te reo, but it's here as well. And it was one of the first long, complicated sentences I read in Te Reo and was able to understand. So for me, that's what it's all about. And that drives me to continue to torture myself because I don't find my mouth gets around the different sounds that naturally, with the exception perhaps of Spanish, because I learned that as a young child in a full immersion environment. So thank you.
So for me, I think the worth of learning language, and in this instance, in this land, for Te Reo Māori, is because our language comes from the environment, and so it helps to describe place. It helps us to define who we are in connection and relative to our landscape, our seascape, our mountains, our rivers, and so as Libby introduced herself, of growing up underneath the ahumairangi, it allows me to automatically connect exactly where Libby grew up from without her having to say too much more. And that connection to place is a really fundamental element, not of just being Indigenous, but also thinking about the opportunities for connection globally. It actually helps to define who we are as New Zealanders. And so on a global sense, Te Reo Māori is the language that becomes the vehicle of our identity that makes us distinctive in the world. And so because it connects us, even if we don't have whakapapa Māori or we don't have genealogy, it is a sense of this is what makes us different compared to people who live across the Tasman or beyond. And I think that's one of the values of learning another language, or learning the language of a place allows you to connect to other places because you have a sense of being grounded in that place. And so one of the things I didn't say that I also do is another side hustle is I'm the Pacific representative on the decade for the celebration of Indigenous languages in the UNESCO Forum, and seeing all kinds of languages come together to discuss, Indigenous languages come together, is about that connection of place, but actually that connection of struggle, the connection of life, in order to promote those languages, to give them a platform. And so the privilege to be on that global UNESCO panel helps me to appreciate the challenges for the multiple languages that live in different places, but also that willingness to want to revitalise in order to make sure that their place is not lost in this world.
Kia ora. I suppose when I was asked to think about the essential worth of language learning, I think we all know, I mean, we're all presumably here in the room have learnt languages and know what it's done for us as individuals to have learnt those languages. So I was thinking more, I suppose, from the point of view of a teacher and the students in my class. We often survey Year 9 students when they come in and are learning a language for the first time, and we ask them to give us information about them, such as, you know, what's your culture, or information about your culture or your cultural identity and your language. And I've always been really shocked, I suppose, at the number of students who actually write, I don't have a culture, or I don't have a language, I don't speak anything. And so I think that one group of people who really benefit from language learning are what we call, so additional language learners, so students learning a language that they don't already speak. And I think the benefits are all of the benefits that we know from the languages we learnt. Understanding otherness helps us to understand ourselves, and often, especially if people are a dominant culture or a privileged culture, they don't actually understand other perspectives until they learn other languages. So, and they start to have to put themselves in a different point of view, or seeing a different way of expressing something. I think that there's another group of people who have, or another area of worth of language learning, and that's heritage or home language learning, whether that be for maintenance purposes or for learning. So people's students' ability to connect to languages that their families speak, that their grandparents speak, that their whānau speak, that they don't necessarily speak very well but want to improve. And I think it's a really invisible group of people in our current curriculum. They actually don't exist in the current curriculum. And I personally feel it's a human rights issue that students in this situation need to be included in our teaching, and there needs to be a space for them. And I think that there's another huge amount of worth in terms of language learning for people where they're learning another language. They learn such a tremendous amount about their first language. So it really improves their understanding of their own language, how it functions, they can, how it functions grammatically, but also it helps show them, I suppose, how much the language they learnt first has shaped the way they see the world that they didn't necessarily register. It helps them to question things about their own language and by meeting others, I think that though language learning is only worth something if other people see it as essential. And I suppose my issue as a teacher is that I see it as essential, and yet we are the only essential learning area in the curriculum not to be compulsory at any level of schooling. We've got national numbers dwindling. There's no evidence at policy level that language learning is seen as essential, or that its essential worth is understood. And yet I feel that we have a number of issues currently in society that language learning would help solve. I believe that it helps address issues of racism or intolerance of others by helping, making it compulsory to learn other languages, putting people in somebody else's shoes, and shifting them out of their sort of mindset they have. And I feel that we have low literacy publicly at the moment, that and yet everybody says, I learnt so much about my own language by learning another language, but that's not really acknowledged. And so I just, and also as the Capes are aware, there's limited intercultural understanding if we're talking about trading and we're looking for a sort of a practical, money-based reason for learning languages. We've got, I think Germany is currently our third biggest trading partner, and German is almost dying in New Zealand schools. So I just feel that there are reasons why language learning is essential and really important, but the question for me is not what we, the converted, see as the essential worth of languages. It unfortunately counts for nothing if society at large isn't prepared to see it as valuable and put their money where their mouth, or sort of support it basically, rather than just having it as an aspirational ideal, a nice to have. It needs to be understood as an essential. Sorry if I've gone a bit off piece there. Okay.
Well done. What do I see as the essential worth of language learning? I mean, simply put, it's communication, but more complexly put, I would say that it is connectedness, and that's what we're here today to talk about, connectedness. Through new languages and language acquisition, I've been able to meet my wife and my family, and my ātai and āpo and ākong, which are my wife's parents, and get to know a whole new lens on the world. And I've found that to be a fascinating insight to different cultures. But also it's slightly strange to think my son and wife were both born in Taiwan, but they've kind of moved here to New Zealand. So where do we call home? Where we call home is really where the people are, because we may be born in different pots, but we're of the same soil, I suppose, is another way to put global connectedness. It definitely learning second languages can open different doors. There have been more than one occasions where I do my best to speak Mandarin Chinese, and when I've got the opportunity in a business setting to even say, how are you in Chinese to a potential client, even that simple phrase will immediately create a bit of a bond, and they'll say, wow, your Chinese is so good, and I'm like, really? I just said hello. But at least it's making an effort, and I think we also look at it the other side, where we've got so many international students here in New Zealand who would be like, you're doing university in a second language, you are doing amazing, your language is much better than my second language, and yet I guess we don't always appreciate that, particularly in schools. We see international students and we don't necessarily appreciate that they're actually doing a school in their second language. And that's a really powerful tool for their future. So I guess what I finished by saying is, what is global citizenship here? And it is, again, is that we are plants born of different, maybe we're in different pots, but we're of the same soil. And language helps to translate that gap just that little bit closer. Thank you.
So I'm coming in from a teacher and a parent perspective of what the essential worth of language is. And I think about children. I think about my own children I've raised and then the children in the classroom. I think that learning another language or other languages just expands your brain. You just have more to play with. So I think that people who are multilinguistic or bilingual, they are able to think better. They have a more problem solving ability because they're more flexible, they're creative. And I think that they are also, they can connect better because they've got to move in different contexts. So they've got to be able to change where they are and change the words they use, the manner, the respectfulness. They've got to know about all that moving into different contexts. And I think if you can do that, you're just a really brainy person. And if for no other reason than to have a quality of life that you cannot experience if you are just monolingual. So I think that's the essential worth, and I think that they just create better humans because they deepen relationships through their emotional intelligence to move widely in circles. And then I suppose the last thing I thought about was, I've just lost it and all of that. But yeah, so from a teacher's perspective and from teaching my kids, that's what I think about. I think that they have a better ability to be flexible and move across different contexts if they are multilingual or bilingual. And the other thing I thought about, that I've just remembered, is that the more you know about yourself, the more you, so when you're learning different languages, you sort of create some sort of superpower. The more you know about yourself as a student, the more confident you are and the better risks you can take in your learning. And confidence is huge. So thank you very much.
Kia ora. Would anyone like to pick up on anything that anyone has said? Feel free to sort of... I was interested too, Rowania, you spoke about identity, and I think there have been lots of things that have been said by other people that speak to the importance of language in terms of identity and language culture, that idea of language, culture and identity. Would you like to talk a little, any of you like to talk a little bit more about how learning languages or your own language or another language has shaped who you are and your sense of yourself in this world?
Sure, only because you said my name first, so give it a go. So I think one of the things, and I'm kind of reflecting on the kōrero from our two teachers and instilling value into young people around languages when they might have grown up in a very monolingual environment, and it can be a bit of a challenge in and of itself. And one of the things that we look at in terms of language revitalisation around how do you kind of keep people feeling they can be motivated. And adult learning second language can actually impose a lot of challenges in that environment because of the sense of lack of proficiency, their own whakamā, or feeling embarrassed that they're not proficient as their children. And that kind of journey alongside can limit and reduce the amount of languages that are used in that space. I had the fortune of presenting at my high school the prize-giving speech, and one of the things that just in engaging with the students there was feeling a sense that te reo Māori wouldn't get them anywhere in the world or be relevant because only the language can only be spoken here. So I was able to talk about how actually te reo Māori has taken me to many countries in the world because people are interested in our language journey as an Indigenous peoples. That 50-year trajectory from protesting to celebrating has been beneficial, and so I was able to kind of map out across the globe that te reo Māori took me to all these places as an academic, and kind of their eyes like, oh my God, like, is that a real thing? And I'm like, yeah, but like people are actually interested in what we do. But also the opportunity of having another language and being able to talk about our situation here and being also humbled by those who are on a different part of that trajectory of language revitalisation. So as the commissioner, I got invited to go to Mexico and talk at one of their language revitalisation conferences and engage with community people in different villages around what they're trying to do. And just some of the things that they were discovering as part of their language curriculum made me think about when the language nest or kohanga reo started here, and having to get our elders who would just translate everything that was, because there were no resources. And so starting from cutting out magazines and writing stories and creating stories and watching that in Mexico and kind of thinking, oh my gosh, we've gone so far. And there's another group of Indigenous people coming in behind us. And so if there are ways to connect on that supporting level of some of the things, like if there's like like I like to give tips, like don't do that, didn't work where we came from, but let's like fast track people to where they want to be. But also kind of being confronted by, and saying that, just saying, oh, this is some of the things that we're doing in New Zealand. And they just kind of like, you're like Star Trek. You've like beamed in from the future and you're too many light years away from us. And that in itself is quite humbling to kind of think, here at home when you're living it, you kind of think, this is taking ages, and kind of that sense of it takes 3 generations to restore a language, it only takes 1 generation to lose it. And so it is a long game, and to kind of think we're further ahead, but there might be things that we can connect on that level of that struggle, because it is a long struggle. So I feel like I'm talking too much and getting on my bandwagon. So if anyone else wants to... Clara, you want to say that? Jump on my bandwagon.
I was just thinking about cultural competency too, because you don't need to speak a language to be respectful to other languages and other cultures. And I think that's very, very important to ask, to Is this also respectful? And as you said, when you're meeting with business people and you speak to them, little bit in Chinese, you make a connection. But it's also as a human being, is there respect that everybody deserves?
I think that when you were talking about identity and and language as well, there's also the element that Alice, I think, in his last principle, is connecting to the sort of the subject, correct me if I've got it wrong, but that sort of subjective extra that it gives you. And I suppose we don't necessarily think about it, but I certainly see it with students. I suppose, for instance, Hannah here, who's, has her kind of French personality and her Mandarin, there are sort of different elements. To me, when we learn a different language, it's like learning to play a different instrument. You can do things on a cello that you can't do on a piano, or like eating different food. And I remember once when my children were little, they said, "Oh, Mummy, whenever you speak French, you always sound so happy." And I suppose it's because I didn't growl at them in French. But it made me think at the time that yes, maybe it was because my voice was lighter, I'm not sure, but yeah, we do have different versions of ourselves when we speak different languages, and that's because those languages offer us different ways of being ourselves. And so I think that that's also something that's really important that a lot of people don't even think about when they're reducing language learning to purely practical, can you get a job with it? Can you do this? Can you do that? It's difficult, especially with students who are choosing their options constantly, and parents who are saying, when it's not, like it's a nice to have, but it's not going to be very useful. I think that it would be great to have a wider understanding of actually just how it gives us other avenues as people ourselves.
I think an element here, and I think Victoria also mentioned this, is learning a language later in life can be a bit of a chore. Certainly I started Mandarin when I was about 24 years old, roughly, and I'm in my 30s now and I still haven't nailed it. However, during my time over in Taiwan, I was also a kindergarten teacher, and so I was teaching under 5-year-olds to speak English, and it wasn't a chore. You just play games and chatted in English, and there was no stress. There was a bit of testing, but basically you're just playing games and talking to each other in English. My brother, he speaks Japanese at home with his Japanese wife and 4 kids, and they watch some TV and they speak Japanese. There is no stress, there is no chore of learning a second language when you are very young, because you can just pick it up. And having a second language when you're under 5 or under 10, whatever that second language happens to be, will make it easier later in life to acquire a 3rd, 4th, 5th language. So it's a bit of a gift you can give someone, or you can give to a young child a second language, because it's something that isn't a chore for them, but it is actually a gift that they can use for the rest of their life, and that is something that I think we should think about.
Just another thought, that bilingualism is a continuum, and there's that end of where you're just receptive, you can't speak it but you understand it, and then there's the other end of the spectrum where you're fully conversant. And I think that if you're standing anywhere on that continuum, you are bilingual. So I had a vision for my kids when I first started last year, teaching the Tokelaun language in my classroom, or teaching through the medium of Tokelaun. I had a vision at the end of the year that they'd be having like little spurts of conversations. They'll be, I could hear the language, but to my disappointment, by the end of the year, they could sing the songs, they could do the recitals, but they couldn't quite do the free play of speaking the language. So I've come to understand that even if they just can hear it and understand, that's enough for now. That maybe in a couple of years, if I have the same students, that later on they'll be a bit more, I'll hear more, but that wherever they are on that continuum, they're bilingual.
Just an additional, fragment to add to this conversation. We were 4 years in France with our 2 children, and listening to people talking about identity, it occurs to me that parts of the French language were kind of woven into our family story. And even to this day, sort of 12 years on, we will occasionally drop a French word into conversation. They're kind of like special pebbles you pick up on a beach while on holiday that you kind of keep. So the language may have gone as being in current use, but the sort of treasures of it are still part of that, and that gives us pleasure still. Just certain languages, someone will complain that something is fishu because it's broken, it's not working. And it's something nice about languages, even when the fluency is gone, some treasures remain.
Just looked at my watch and I'm hoping that you've got some questions out there. I'm going to try not to fall over. That one doesn't work. So we've got a couple of mics. We'll leave one mic here and then over to there. Let me see your fingers twitching.
Thank you. Hello, everyone else. I'm Jackie. I'm an international student study at Victoria University of Wellington. Recently, I'm be curious to explore about the Argentina cultures because of the heroes called San Martin and the famous band for Soda Stereo. The reason is that the people's feeling enthusiastic. The scholar have the famous players called the Leo Messi. So that's the reason I want to explore about this country as well. So I asked a question for you. No, for you. I'm a Chinese. My hometown is in Zhongshan City, which is Canton Province. The founder of Sun Yat-sen's hometown. And I wanted to ask you, does Sun Yat-sen inspire you to learn Mandarin? Does Sun Yat-sen inspire you to learn about the Chinese?
To be honest, what inspired me to learn Chinese was I had the opportunity to go visit Taiwan, and while I was over there, I had been in Asia for the first time, and it was very different to New Zealand. The lights, the energy, the people, the friendship and kindness. And having come back to New Zealand, I then had the opportunity to put my name forward for the Prime Minister's Scholarship for Asia. It was never part of my master plan to acquire a second language. It was more, I took the opportunity that presented itself very late in my life. So had I thought earlier, had I been inspired elsewhere earlier in my life, I would have preferred to learn languages much earlier than the age of 24. But no, it was very much serendipity that got me overseas and had changed my life forever as well.
Kia ora, tēnā koutou katoa. I had a question for you, Rawinia. I tupua hau i Buenos Aires, Argentina. One of my big questions was, as Madam Ambassador will be able to tell you, we have a vast number of indigenous peoples and languages in Argentina. So, ki kone ki Aotearoa, we are very fortunate that Te Reo Māori is the language spoken across the entire country, with its dialectal variations. Obviously, I was wondering what your advice would be for revitalizing indigenous languages in countries where the indigenous populations are so small, scattered, and varied.
No, that's a great question. And I think one of the things that we've learnt over the last 50 years is that we've had an obsession with just formal education as being the primary way of revitalising language. I think one of the things that we've also found, and others have kind of gestured towards it, is language in the home is equally as important. And languages are caught, not taught. And so, as Oliver was describing, being able to gain fluency is, just being talking naturally is where people pick up the richness of language. But as adult learners, we obsess over getting everything right and not just using the language that you have. And so I think one of the things we've learnt in this country, particularly around understanding language revitalisation and policy and planning, is the things that we do in the home and the creation of domains that support and nourish that don't have to be big elaborate plans. Sometimes it's just starting really small in the place where you actually have conversations with people. And that might just be at breakfast, it might be at dinner time, and starting really small and using the language and creating the corpus or the body of language that you need just to survive that. Because it is a long game and it is an intergenerational process that, but often, particularly in today's world, we want it tomorrow. We want to be fluent really quickly. And then we also have to deal with our own internal dynamic that can kind of put us on and off the language. So there'll be different things that'll make us really pro-language. And then there'll be things that you just go, oh, nah, that's not me. And it's one of the things that we've kind of tried to encourage with families is that, there's micro-language planning, in the home. Our strategy around that has been what we call kia ukai poa no te reo, which means to return the language to the breast of the mother. And so that language is transmitted from day one. And so they catch language. And then from a macro language, it's around kia mahorohora te reo, and let the language be everywhere because that adds value. People see it. If you can see it and hear it, you tend to value it. And so it's kind of those small little steps that help those. So yes, we only have one te reo Māori base language, but we have quite a lot of dialects that it's actually quite hard some of them are harder than others. And so those who've listened to Shane Jones on television, where he comes from, it's very guttural and they go really fast and it's kind of hard to follow the thread. And so today what we're seeing, 54 years on, is a lot of concentration on dialect. And so I feel like we started with a base language, now we're just ramping it up into that diversified dialect. This is kind of my jam, so I love talking about this, but I realise that it's getting late.
There'll be time afterwards to... Thank you so much, Victoria. Thank you very, very much.
Kia ora koutou katoa, ko Peria Short taku ingoa. Not to throw the cat among the pigeons, but I wanted to ask our teachers particularly about looking towards the future and how our whole conversation here this evening has been about language as a gateway to so many other facets of our lives and how language is such a taonga for that in so many ways. But we have the likes of Google and Microsoft and the rest of them coming on stream with AI such that actually we will just be able to use our devices wherever we go globally and not actually have to take the time to learn another language because it will all be done for us if we choose to use it with technology. What do we do about that and I suspect in the education system is probably one of the places that's going to be so key for that going forward because we've had such a lovely broad compass of what language is about, and yet in my view, the world of AI is taking us just into that very transactional, I need fuel and a beer. And so, what if we're travelling the world, I'd be interested in your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Well, firstly, so Google is getting better, but it's still not your friend. We've still got lots and lots of ways in which it trips students up when they try to use it, and even AI has got its limitations, but really the main limitation is that if you're going on a school trip to New Caledonia and you're with a homestay family and they're talking to you over breakfast, you can't be constantly whipping out your AI and typing stuff in and then saying, oh, here's my paragraph 10 minutes later. You know, if the whole point of learning a language is to be able to communicate with people, a lot of that is quite instant and quite contextual. It's in a market somewhere, it's in a shop somewhere, it's sitting next to somebody on a bus, and you're not going to be using Google to do that. You're not going to be typing in your thing to AI. So yes, it might help you with your writing assessment badly, but if language learning is all about being able to communicate with people in a situation, then I actually just don't think it helps. I mean, it's, I suppose, similar to the way in which for years and years and years, while I've been teaching in the background, there's been this, maybe we can just replace teachers and you know, put kids in a room with a computer and they'll magically learn stuff. And I feel like lockdown showed us that that absolutely is not true. You can't just put a student in a room with a computer and they'll come out in 6 months' time learning something. We learn through human contact. We learn, according to Gianfranco Conti, we learn language by listening to it, not by dialing it up on a computer. You know, we learn so much that online computer things can support, but they're never going to take the place of that. That's my view.
What she said.
Kia ora koutou, ko Juliet toku ingoa. I'm here representing the New Zealand Association of Language Teachers, and I just want to really thank everyone that's spoken tonight. You're fantastic, and we love that you're flying the banner for our reo. It's awesome. It's not a question really, it's a thought, and it's a sort of disturbing thought, and it's not really aimed at anyone, but it's very sort of almost ironic having this kōrero in this tertiary space, because I'm really concerned about where languages are at in tertiary education. And like I was just thinking, I'm in my mid-40s, and people of my parents' generation who are sort of 70s plus, they had to do a language to do a degree in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So my friend's mum did Indonesian, and I've got a friend whose dad did Russian. And a relation of Tufaina actually from Victoria University went to Norway to study nganganga Tokelaun. And nganganga Tokelaun is a realm language of our country. And so I know I'm talking to the converted, because otherwise he wouldn't be here. But I'd really just want to say, how can we build language education back into a quality tertiary education? And I just tautoko, the amazing, I know there's lecturers in here. You're amazing, and we love what you do, and we want to just have a further kōrero about how we can actually bring it back into our tertiary, our secondary education. We're working really hard, but it's also a very challenging space, and then to link it all the way from ECE right the way through to tertiary and lifelong learners. So it's not a question, it's just something that I've been thinking that I wanted to share when we're in this tertiary space here. Kia ora, and thank you again, everybody, for coming and supporting languages, because we need us to support it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kia ora, my name is Ellie, and before I ask my question, without trying not to get emotional, I just want to dedicate my question to my koro, who isn't able to be here to see this kōrero, but I know he would really appreciate it. Sorry. Thanks, guys. I am a board member for the Louise Nicholas Trust, and we Yeah, sorry. We deal with social services related to sexual assault